Hey folks, walk with me. Well, I heard an idea in a podcast that I thought I would share because I thought it resonated and I thought it might with others as well. I'll mention the podcast at the end. I'll put it in the description below as well if you want to check it out. But um, the idea was that in a very simplified sense, so just keep in mind, this is in a very simplified sense. Humans and human nature, especially, is comprised of three layers. And you can sort of think of it as like layers of a shell or of an egg, whatever. Um, but the outer layer is the act. This is everything that you want the world, that you want other people to think that you are, right? It is essentially what people complain about with social media, right? The people are just putting out things that they want other people to see, and everything that they don't want them to see, they just don't include it. This is the act, right? The layer just below that is everything that you are terrified that people will find out about you, or things that you really dislike about yourself. And oftentimes those are very much the same thing, right? But yeah, sitting just below that act, and you can see sort of the proximity of those things kind of feeding each other, right? The idea that just below the surface of what you put out there into the world sits everything that you know about yourself that you are terrified is going to see the light of day. And so you apply this protective shell, this outer layer, and you put on this act so that even if people did suspect something or they heard something, because your act is so good, they might think, oh, that person would never do that. I know them. That would be totally out of character for them. So you can sort of see how tightly knit those two layers are. And then there's the third layer. And this is considered the genuine inner core, like the actual you that doesn't feel that it has to be terrified if your bad parts or the things that you're ashamed of or the mistakes that you've made, if those things see the light of day, that you don't have to be just endlessly terrified of that, and that you don't have to put on an act. That whatever your sincere core is at the moment, if it's happy, sad, regretful, afraid, whatever, that could be, God forbid, that could be what people see, because that's what you present. And this person in the podcast was basically saying that, you want to at least try to be able to identify what these things are. Identify, when you're putting on the act. Because if you can identify that you're putting on the act, you know that it's not your actual core you. And at the same time, while the act is all of the, at least from your perspective, the good things, right? Even if they are from the outside's perspective bad things, they are willfully what you want to put out there into the world. And maybe they are angry, destructive things because you want to push people away. You want to keep people at a distance. But for you, that's protective and good. But by saying like, oh, there's my act, like there's the thing I do, it gives you some acknowledgement and therefore then some distance to say, okay, that's my act. Everyone has an act. I'm not going to beat myself up for it. But I know that it's not genuine me. And same thing with all of those terrifying things that everyone could find out about you. If you see yourself acting out or, taking protective stances or actions where maybe you don't actually need to, or you're really sort of like snapping on something because it just hits the nail too squarely on the head for all the things that you fear the world will find out about you. You know, if you can at least say, whoa, why is that hitting me so hard? Or why am I having such a crazed reaction to this? Oh, it's my second layer stuff. It's the things that I most fear others will find out about me. Again, that at least gives you some acknowledgement and maybe some distance in saying like, okay, those are things that I've bucketed together in a certain place in my mind, and I've judged them a certain way, but they aren't core me, right? They're mistakes that I made, they're regretful things that I've done, as has everybody. And so I'm going to acknowledge them as such and not give them, you know, more power or a bigger role to play here than that. And then this maybe leaves you an opportunity for this core being. And what is that? I feel like when I look back, it's very apparent to me where I've acted on the outer layer, where I've acted on the second layer, and periods of time, thankfully, where I have acted from the core. I don't think in the moment it was as apparent as that. I didn't have this framework, I didn't have any sort of concept around this. To me, it was just all one thing. But looking back, I feel like I can unpack it a lot. And I think, again, maybe by knowing it, acknowledging it, and being able to work with that, with the framework, with the concept, oversimplified as it is, that it can give you an opportunity to see some of these things more in real time versus just looking back and logging these things historically, which I don't think is a bad exercise to have, especially things you really beat yourself up about, especially things that you feel define you in very negative ways. I don't think it's bad to consider reviewing those things through this lens and seeing if you can shift that some. And I will also say, as one last thing, it does feel to me that the inner core is almost a place of emptiness. And I mean that in a great way, not in a way where people go, I feel empty, I feel numb, I feel like I don't feel anything. Spaciousness and emptiness in the sense of like a child's mind, like a child's experience, a newborn's experience is empty, right? There's very little there. It has much more ahead of it than it has behind it. And to me, the inner core feels like that. The exponential potential of openness and spaciousness and emptiness. You know, in that emptiness is rampant potential. If it's already filled up and cluttered with things, there's no space for anything new. There's no space for shifting. There's no space for, if you want to get real, you know, self-helpy about it, no room for growth. And I'd be interested to hear if this resonates with people, how that inner core being feels to them. Because it's just me, so I don't know if anyone else would have this sort of empty, open experience or not. But it'd be interesting to hear what that feels like to other people. All right, folks. Well, if you walked with me this far or watched along, I certainly appreciate it. And as always, I will see you in the next video.